All right, hey guys, welcome to Through the Bible Verse by Verse, plain and simple study of the entire Bible, verse by verse, chapter by chapter, and book by book. We are currently in Numbers, chapter 32, and again, we're close. Numbers is giving us sort of the close out, the last days of Moses' administration. And there are things that he is going to be taking care of, sort of the last acts of his duties, right, before he is to pass on. God had told him one of his last official acts, you could say, well, not the official act, I say that, let me correct myself. It wasn't his last official act, but one of the last official acts, he had the war against the Midians. And then he said after that you would be gathered. Now, there are a couple other things he's going to administrate. And so what's going to happen is that's going to take us into the book of Deuteronomy. And then the book of Deuteronomy is really, literally the last day of Moses' life. And so he's going to give that, in a sense you can say the book of Deuteronomy is one long exhortation, commandments, okay, to the people, and then he will die. All right, so chapter 32, excuse me, and now this is kind of, in this sense, interesting here. This story is God's plan was for them to be into the land of Israel that he's going to give them. 2.5 tribes will settle on the other side of Jordan. Not the best plan, but it will be something that God will concede to. Okay, so let's read. The Ruminites and the Gadites, or the tribe of Gad, and it says, had a very large number of livestock, and when they surveyed the lands of Jazer and Gilead, they saw that the region was a good one for livestock. So the Gadites and the Reubenites came to Moses, Eleazar the priest, and the leaders of the community, and said, the territory of Ataroth, Debah, Jezreel, Nimrah, Heshbon, Eliad, Sebim, Nebo, and beyond, and again, forgive my butchering of these names, correct pronunciation of the names. All right, verse 4. He says, which the Lord struck down before the community of Israel. It's good land for livestock, and your servants own livestock. They said, if we found favor in your sight, let this land be given to your servants as a possession. Don't make us cross the Jordan. But Moses asked the Gadites and the Reubenites, should your brothers go to war while you stay here? Why are you discouraging the Israelites from crossing into the land the Lord has given them? That's what your fathers did when I sent them to Kadesh Barnea to see the land. After they went up as far as Issachar Valley and saw the land, they discouraged the Israelites from entering the land the Lord has given them. He's talking about that first generation. He says, the Lord's anger burned that day, and he swore an oath, because they did not follow me completely. None of the men 20 years old or more who came up from Egypt will see the land I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. None except Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, and the Kenizzite, and Joshua, the son of Nun, because they did follow me completely. The Lord's anger burned against Israel, and he made them wander in the wilderness 40 years until the whole generation that had done what was evil in the Lord's sight was gone. And here, you, a brood of sinners, stand in your father's place, adding even more to the Lord's burning anger against Israel. If you turn back from following him, he will once again leave this people in the wilderness, and you would destroy all of them. So Moses was a little touchy, and they should be. It would be like, I don't know if some of you all remember, like now in New York, especially now, we're 20 years away from, we're over 20 years past 9/11. But I remember when the former President Barack Obama got in office in his administration, somebody in his administration decided to do a flyby. They did it with Air Force One, but they had a low flyby. Now that's very sensitive to New Yorkers. When they see a plane riding low, the very first thing they're going to think about is 9/11. Okay, so I'm saying is that here is that Moses is kind of chiming him, saying, "Hey, wait a minute. This is the kind of stuff that got us in trouble now. It took us 40 years to get that generation out. And here you go offering something that is going to be evil, that's going to cause the people, and who knows what will happen, right? Will we spend another 40 years in the wilderness?" So here's their reply. Verse 16, they approached him and said, "We want to build sheepfolds here for our livestock and cities for our dependents. But we will arm ourselves and be ready to go ahead of the Israelites until we have brought them into the place. Meanwhile, our dependents will remain here in the fortified cities because of the inhabitants of the land. We will not return to our homes until each of the Israelites have taken possession of his inheritance." Now we'll get to this inheritance in just a couple of chapters where the land is divided up. Verse 19, "Yet we will not have an inheritance with them across the Jordan or beyond, because our inheritance will be across the Jordan to the east." And Moses replied to them, "If you do this, if you arm yourselves for battle before the Lord, and every one of you armed men crosses the Jordan before the Lord until he has driven his enemies from his presence, and the land is subdued before the Lord, afterwards you may return and be free from your obligation that the Lord Israel and to the Lord and to Israel. And this land will belong to you as a possession before the Lord. But if you not do this, you will certainly sin against the Lord, and be sure your sin will catch up with you. Build cities for your dependents and folds for your flocks, but do what you promised." And the Gadites and the Ruminites answered to Moses, "Your servants will do just as my Lord commands. Our little children, wives, and livestock, and all of our animals will remain here in the city of Gilead. But your servants are equipped for war before the Lord, and will go across to battle as my Lord ordered." So Moses gave orders about them to Eleazar the priest, Joshua the son of Nun, and the family leaders of the Israelites tribes. Moses told them, "If the Gadites and the Reubenites cross the Jordan with you, every man in battle formation before the Lord, and the land is subdued before you, you are to give them the land of Gilead as a possession. But if they don't go across with you in battle formation, they must accept the land of Canaan with you." Then the Gadites and the Reubenites replied, "What the Lord has spoken to your servants is what we will do. We will cross over in battle formation before the Lord into the land of the Canaanites, but we will keep our hereditary possessions across the Jordans." So Moses gave them, the Gadites and Reubenites, and half the tribe of Manasseh, the son of Joseph, the kingdoms of Sihon, the kingdom of Sihon, king of the Amorites, and the kingdom of Og, the king of Bashan, the lands including its cities, where the territory surrounded them. And the Gadites rebuilt Dibon, Eteroth, Ahorah, Etroth, and Shephron, Jezar, and Jehabah, Bethlehem and Beth Haran as fortified cities, and built sheepfolds. Then the Reubenites rebuilt Heshon, Elon, Kitram, as well as Nebo and Baal Meon, whose names were changed. And Sibon, they gave names to the cities they rebuilt. Now, kind of interesting. I go on because I know this is a long read right here. A couple of things I want to say about this, but again, this is not the best advice. This is not necessarily the best wisdom, I should say, but however, God allowed it, and also God will protect them. And we're going to see that there's going to be another incident where they will build memorial statue, and we'll get to that later when we get into Joshua. Okay. But I notice this in verse 38. I will point this out. As he says as well as Nebo and Baal Meon, whose names were changed. The reason I want to say this is that, and this is kind of a sidebar issue, because sometimes people will say, let's say for example Christmas, right? Christmas and Easter, and people will say the Christians are celebrating pagan holidays and stuff. And whenever you would ask them, well, what specific holidays are they worshiping? What specific god, what specific pagan religion are they worshiping? Of course, they can't give you an answer. What I'm saying here is that you see a pattern among God's people. That sometimes they will take a day, or they will take, like in this case, a city, but notice they're changing the name. They're changing the name. So the city of Nebo Baal Meon, that's not the city they're living in. They conquered it, they took it, and they're going to change the name. That's why. So they changed the name. Okay. Verse 39, the descendants of Meshai, son of Manasseh, went to Gilead, captured it, and drove out the Amorites who were there. So Moses gave Gilead to the clan of Machar, son of Manasseh, and they settled in it. Jar, the descendants of Manasseh went and captured their villages, which renamed Jar villages. Nebo went and captured Kenneth with his villages and called Nabal after his own name. So again, some of these names, like I say, you see that you can change. And also, let me say this: apologies again, because these too many names that I'm not pronouncing right, and that I often say, if you have a Bible app, they have the audio version of it. Those guys spent a lot of time training to pronounce these names. I just didn't. All right, chapter 33. And here we're going to have a review of the 40-year travels of Israel. So I'm just going to read most of them, but if we they start back from Exodus, in the book of Exodus, and then they're going to go all the way kind of through. And these are things we didn't hear about before, only because, again, if they spend a week here or 2 weeks there, it wasn't that important. But Moses is going to review this, and then this is going to be stated. So verse 1 says, "These were the stages of the Israelites' journey when they went out of the land of Egypt by their military divisions under the leadership of Moses and Aaron. At the Lord's command, Moses wrote down the starting point for the stages of their journeys, and these are the stages listed by their starting point." Now Moses wrote them down, and notice he wrote them down at the Lord's command. Okay. Verse 3, "They departed from Ramesses in the first month, in the 15th day of the month. On the day after the Passover, the Israelites went out triumphantly in the sight of all of the Egyptians. Meanwhile, the Egyptians were burying every firstborn male the Lord had struck down among them, for the Lord had executed judgment against their God." And this is very interesting. We're going to get tidbits too of information. So notice one of the reasons that God had taken them through this, he was also destroying all of their gods that they had such trust and belief in. Verse 5, "The Israelites departed from Ramesses and camped at Succoth. They departed from Succoth and camped at Etham, which is on the edge of the wilderness. They departed from Etham and turned back to Pehithron, to Perath, which faces Baal Zephan, and they camped before Megiddo. They departed from Pi-Heroth and crossed through the middle of the sea of the wilderness. They took a 3-day journey into the wilderness. At Etham and camped at Merah. They departed from Merah and came to Elim. There, the 12 springs of water and 7 date palms at Elim. There were 12 springs of water and 70 date palms at Elim. So they camped there. They departed from Elim encamped by the Red Sea. They departed from the Red Sea, encamped in the wilderness of Zin. They departed from the wilderness of Sin, encamped by Depach, and they departed from Depach, encamped at Alush. They departed from Alush, encamped at Rephidim, where there was no water for the people to drink. They departed from Rephidim and camped in the wilderness of Sinai. They departed from the wilderness of Sinai and camped at Kibroth Hetavah, and they departed from Kibroth Hephadah and camped at Hazeroth. They departed from Hazeroth and camped at Rithmah, and departed from Rithmah and camped at Rimmon Perez. They departed from Rimmon Perez and camped at Libnah, and departed from Libnah and camped at Rizah. And they departed from Rizah and camped at Kola-Neith, and they departed from Kola-Neith and camped at Mount Sephadah. They departed from Mount Sephadah and camped at Heradah. They departed from Heradah and camped at Mikalah. They departed from Mikalah at the camp of Tivah. They departed from Tilha and camped at Terah. They departed from Terah and camped at Mikah. They departed from Mitkah and camped at Heshmahah. They departed from Heshmahah and camped at Majrah. They departed from Majrah and camped at Bina-Jekah. They departed from Bina-Jekah and camped at Hor-Jakadah. They departed from Hor-Jakadah and camped at Jabbadah. They departed from Jabbadah and camped at Arabah, and departed from Arabah and camped at Jekabah. They departed from Israel, Gibbah, and camped at the wilderness of Zin, that is Kadesh. They departed from Kadesh and camped at Mount Hor, at the edge of the land of Edom. And at the Lord's command, Aaron, the priest, climbed the Mount of Hor. Now, this is the 38th year, okay, that we now have come to. So all of that I read was their 40 years of travel. So Aaron the priest climbed Mount Hor and died there on the first day of the 5th month in the 40th year. I take that back, the 40th year. Let me correct myself. The 40th year. Miriam died in the 38th year, I believe it was, towards the end of the 38th year. So in the 5th month of the 40th year, he said Aaron died. Let me read that again. At the Lord's command, Aaron the priest climbed Mount Hor and died there on the first day of the 5th month in the 40th year after the Israelites went out of the land of Egypt. Aaron was 123 years old when he died at Mount Hor. At the time of the Canaanites, king of Arad, who lived in Negev, the land of Canaan, heard the Israelites were coming. They departed from Mount Hor and camped at Zimalah. They departed from Zimamoah, and camped at Punah. And they departed from Punah and camped at Obath. They departed from Obath and camped in Liberum, the border of Moab. They departed from Liam and camped at Dibba-Gad. And they departed from Gibbedad and camped at Alam-di-Belim. And they departed from Alam-di-Belim and camped at Ibarim range facing Nebo. They departed from Ibarim in range and camped in the plains of Moab by the Jordan, across from Jorah. They camped by the Jordan from Beth Jibba and Akra, the meadow in the plains of Joab. All right, I'm going to stop here. Do I get the time to read here? All right, I think I'm going to squeeze in the rest of this chapter. The Lord spoke to Moses in the plain of. No, you know what? I'm going to stop here. I'm going to pick it up in. I'm going to pick it up because I'm going to rush this. I'm going to pick it up here. Okay. Now, the reason why I want to do this because I want to close out. I'm out of time here, but it seems like a lot. Right, it seems like a lot, but when you spread it out 40 years, it's really not a lot. Okay, that's my point I wanted to say. Okay, I'm going to pick back up at this point in the next study. All right, guys, I'll see you then.